All right, so this is Carl Dieter Crispin. He's been active in the SAGE community for a very long time, and it's particularly with the educational side of the community. Carl?
So what I just wanted to talk to you about is basically, in some sense, a continuation of Jason's talk, which is why we moved it around so his would be first from the original setup. Basically, I want to show you that it actually is possible for you to take some of the stuff that you've done and turn it into lecture notes of these kinds. You might say, I'm no Jason Grout programmer, I can't do it, but yes, you can do it. And so I wanted to show you what you can do with this. So this is a temporary website for now. I'm going to make it a little more permanent soon. For the lecture notes for my number theory class from this past spring, you can see we have a number of different things. Here's day 2. I have a little interact. I'll evaluate it again, and hopefully the cell server will like me. Maybe it won't, so I'll have to reload the page, Jason. Doggone it.
Has it been up there for a while?
It has been up there for a while because I waited so long to give my talk. And you can see that I'm just making little snippets here. What are the ways that we can write combinations of 7 and 5? And so this is sometimes called the coin problem or the Frobenius problem. And I'm not sure I can move that much more, William.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
There you go. So it's just a nice little interactive thing. It's in a web page. I also have some things, and apparently I should be using not div mod because it gives me something else, but I'll fix that. It's just a little thing that they can change it if they don't want to do 281,376. They can put 123,890 and evaluate that, and the remainder is 2, and so forth. So you can use it both for small computations because of the magic of MathJax. I can put in all kinds of tech, and it makes nice techy symbols and things like that. It's HTML, so I can do at least some formatting. I get some remainders. You can use the link thing. The reason that I picked this particular page was because I wanted to show you that the link thing really does work inside a web page. Here it's a cryptography thing. Let me make this a little bigger. I'm encoding in a really, really dumb, naive way that Greg will probably not like. Numbers, integers into strings, just something that I wrote myself. You'll see that it's going to turn black here in a second, or maybe it already finished saying it's done, and now I'm going to encode the letter Q, and I get 17. And if I want to change that and encode the letter T, I'll evaluate that and I'll get 20. And of course that encode is not in Sage, it's only defined up here. So the linking thing really works. Okay? So the idea is that you want to be able to do a lot of different stuff, and how do you do it? So I want to convince you that this is in fact possible. So my notes next tell me that I want to show you the code for the 2 pages. So there's an easy part and there's a hard part. And thankfully Jason showed you the hard part. So the easy part is just writing things like first test some ideas. Notice that with the one tried above, which we did in class last time, we are definitely getting the same answers. The hard part is, what's all this stuff up here? Script, sage cell.sock.js options, sage style type, and then there's all this strange stuff around some what's evidently Sage code in the middle, and there's some wacky stuff around it. You can see that it's almost exactly the same with this one, except I've added this linked true. And again, I don't have to say much about it because Jason just talked about it. That's the one where I could define the encode, and then I could actually use it in the next cell. So I was able to actually do something with it in the next cell. It really does work. But some of you might take a look at this and say, this is really crazy, it's a really long thing, and how might I actually do this? And the short answer is, it's really quite easy. So let's take a look at this from an example that I just cooked up specifically for today, which is, this is the Sage server at Gordon, and I did some things this semester, so there's lots of ways you can use Sage in the classroom, as with any computer system. The way I do it most of the time is I actually don't have labs. I don't necessarily ask my students to use Sage. Offhand, I use it in classroom demonstrations, and then I also use interact technology in the Sage cell. But I don't always ask them to make worksheets. So here what I did is I made worksheets that I published, and then what I did is I put them online if people wanted to use them, or otherwise they could just use them in class. And so Tom Judson has this wonderful smiley guy graphic, which, or at least I apparently suited Tom. That's what I told him. Jane Long turned it into a Sage Interact. Am I right? That's what I've been telling people all year. So.
I used it, but I certainly wouldn't attribute it to me.
Oh, okay. Well, so some person showed it to Tom and Jane. And so what's cool about this is that you have this smiley guy, and you can use different matrices to show what happens when you transform him by various things. And so you can update this, and you can see that you have to click update twice, which is a bug of some kind. And so you can see the first update was this kind of a sheer, and then there's a much crazier transformation after this. So what if I want to embed that in a web page? What if I want to turn this into something that my students could use? What would I do? Okay, we hopefully, by the end of this time you're here, you'll know how to use a Sage worksheet, although you don't even have to know that in order to do this. But let's say that you've made a Sage worksheet. It turns out that that does most of the work for you. And that's what really this talk is about. So if I zoom in again, you'll see it up at the top of the worksheet. And so maybe I'll have to make a plug to the developer of cloud.stagemath, whoever he is, to make sure that this could still work, which I'm sure it will. If I go to worksheet, oops, that's right, I'm sorry, if I go to text, no, that's not what I want either. But if I go to text, you see that it looks an awful lot like HTML. There's these little H1 tags, there's Sage code, and that almost looks like something that I could use. If I click Edit, it becomes something I really can use. And so this is the part that I'm not sure exactly how that's going to be implemented in SageMath Cloud, but I can just cut and paste this entire thing. And of course there's a lot because it's a big page, so that's unfortunate maybe, but I can, select all and then copy, and I can just put that into a plain text document and start from that as the thing for my Sage. So that's the main thing, is that you can take a Sage worksheet and you can just do that. So if you've already got stuff that you're using, prototyping, then you can go along that way. So let's see what this looks like in a new file. So here I have a demo, and I call it mydemo.html, and you can see that right now it's empty. But of course I did it beforehand, so I'm not going to do these things live. Who would be so silly as to try and do something without testing it ahead of time? So instead I'm going to undo the changes I already undid, so I guess I'm redoing them. So first I just copied everything and plugged it in. And there it is. You can see there's a lot of stuff there, which makes sense because I had a pretty big web page. Smiley guy had all kinds of horrible things happen to him, but that's what linear algebra can do to smiley faces. Well, it's just what it does. So what you'll notice is that it already looks a lot like a web page, but some stuff is different. For instance, there isn't all that top matter that you saw in say, this guy. That top matter isn't there. And then around the Sage code, there isn't this whole div thing. It's just this bizarre 3 brackets and then other stuff. So how would I change that? Well, the first thing I can do is I can cut and paste either from my previous web page, or better, from the About the Sage Cell server. I can just cut and paste these instructions. Now you have to do a little more than that, because you have to actually make it legitimate HTML. So you'll notice that at the top of my demo, I have a few extra things that are just in any HTML. But you can just crib that from somewhere else, or you can even get rid of some of these things. I mean, Jason, in fact, maybe it'd be useful to have a mock. Oh, that's what I was going to say. There's a mock-up of an actual web page. If you go on the Sage Cell server About, if you click on lots of options here, you see this? Let me make it a little bigger. Lots of options. If you click on that, what you'll get is the full documentation and a full web page that you can just cut and paste. That's all the magic that happens. And that 15 years ago, people could get paid lots of money because nobody knew how to do this. And now, of course, a lot of people know how to do this, so it's a little hard to get a job if that's all you know how to do. So this is magic, because now I just insert that at the top. What did I do here? Why does it say MAT 338 course notes? That's because I just copied it directly from something. I can change that title to the web page. In fact, I think that's the first thing I did. I changed it to my demo. All right, let's see. I'm not sure if I can zoom in on this easily. Yeah, I think this one, I don't think I can make it any bigger, unless Jason knows how. You can enter full screen, but that's going to be kind of hard. The next change I made is somewhere. Well, maybe that's all I did. I guess I didn't make any more changes, so we'll have to do it live after all. This thing here is not what you saw in Jason's website. That's because of the nasty problems that we were having before. If I did it today, I'd do it exactly like the web page says to.
If you use HTTPS, you can just ignore whatever.
Exactly. So just putting in exactly what he has here, or using the instructions right here, just putting them on. So the next thing that I have to do, once I put all that stuff in here, is figure out how to turn this into an actual legitimate web page. And even though I thought I had done so, I must have already unsaved something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just one piece. So this is going to be really annoying because it takes forever to scroll through things.
Just like shift N or shift control.
I have no idea.
down
Shift
arrow or something.
Shift down arrow? No. Shift and no.
Option down there.
Option down arrow. So this is, oh, there we go, it goes faster anyway. So I'm going to get rid of all this other stuff because frankly, that's just too much work. And I'm just going to keep this one thing where I'm moving smiley guy around. And at the bottom of the web page, which you will notice if you go here, the bottom of every web page has to have these two things at the bottom. So I'm actually going to cut those things right now live and paste them in at the bottom. Okay? So now, all I have left to do to turn this into an interactive page is I have to do the thing that it says here. Include code in the body of the page. The code is wrapped in script tags, so is not treated as HTML. Well, that sounds pretty good. So what I'm going to do is, here's what the end of it should look like. So I'll copy that. Everything after my Sage cell should look like that. Notice that the format inside a Sage worksheet has this extra 3 of everything. And that I replace that. And then at the top, there's this ID thing. So what I'm going to do is get rid of that, and I'm going to replace that by this div thing. Now I'm going to use the div from my other one because I want to make sure it looks exactly the same as the ones that we had. And I think if I save this now, so all I did was the Sage code is the same, right? I mostly was deleting and cutting and pasting. I think if I go to my demo.html, there he goes, right? Yeah. Smiley guy. So this is it. I just did it by hand live. You can do this too. Now, that's the main part of the talk. I don't have to show you a lot of the Sage cell documentation for how to do this. I do want to point out the linked true option again. I think that that's a really, really useful thing. And so reading through this embedding Sage cell instances gives you some good information about how to make different customized things, which for your own purposes may be very useful. For instance, you may want to only link certain cells and then redefine something. You may want to have some custom CSS if you know a little bit about that kind of stuff, or you have a student that you have a small amount of money you can pay for to do some custom things. Maybe to customize it, you'll notice that my web pages don't look particularly Gordon-y. The only reason this one does is because this isn't my web page. It's just got a general header that I copied from somebody. So if you want to customize things a little bit, that's something that you could pretty easily do. One warning, 2 warnings actually. The first warning is, with this workflow that you do need, so let's say I made this. Okay, well now let's say I want to write some text about it. I got this worksheet. Now I got to do some HTML stuff. P for paragraph, and I really like Sage. Close the P. And then what if I want to emphasize that? I want to make that italics. I'm going to have to know how to do this. Now, that's not as bad as it sounds, because if you take a look in your plain text, how do we apply the next transformation? It's already in there. So if you use the text editor thing in Sage to make things like italicize or bold or whatever, it's already going to be in there. The HTML will already be in there. So you don't have to do that much. So you can use the worksheet prototype. But if you want to start from scratch, you may have to do a little bit of customization like that. So I recommend using a text editor maybe as opposed to like Word or something like that to make these documents. The other problem is the printing. It looks okay. Like if I print my day 23 course notes, which I only point out because somebody was talking about using lattices in number theory, and so that's a really great way to show. Of course, now it's already too long because somebody's previous talk was more than 20 minutes, which mine is not going to be now. So you can see here's lattices, and we're proving that the sum of squares is a prime only of 4n plus 1, not 4n plus 3, using this thing. So it's pretty easy to use Sage to do that. Now if I print it, I can actually print it, just print it, and if I save it to PDF, it looks okay, right? The tech stuff looks pretty nice. That doesn't look as nice, it's okay. And then the evaluated one, there's still some bugs to be worked out on that, which is why if you're going to make a book out of it, you probably want to do a little bit more work in making some kind of unified source, which Rob will talk about next. But for the kind of stuff that I'm talking about here for course notes, this is really very nice. It's interactive. It's just online. They like that aspect of it. And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Oh, the final thing is if you have a lot of worksheets or you have a lot of stuff, don't worry. I personally did all this stuff by hand cutting and pasting every day of class. You don't have to do that. It's possible to email someone in the Sage support list, and I'm sure they'll cook up a script for you for extracting all these things and replacing with Sage Cell instances, and then maybe Jason can even put it on the Sage Cell website. So those things are all there. Any questions or comments or anything else? Jason?
I put the full example on the About page. It should be pushed out in an hour or so.
Great. Which is just the example you had already.
Yeah, I just copied and pasted it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does this interact with the other HTML features and Java?
I don't know.
Does it have, if there's conflicts or
Jason has some comments on the Sage Cell where if you're using some specialized CSS or JavaScript, that there might be some conflict that it's mentioned. But in general, it shouldn't be a conflict because it's just a script and it's just doing its scripty thing. So, I don't see why there would be any conflict. I didn't do anything very sophisticated because I'm not a programmer per se. I just kind of learned how to do these things. And that's what the point of the talk is. You guys can do it too. But I'm sure that you could cook up something sufficiently complicated that it would cause a problem somewhere, somehow.
The web is catching up to these technologies. There's some new technologies coming out in browsers that'll make it so that there won't be any conflict. But right now we do interact with the surrounding page a little bit. And so you can change things in the surrounding page that will conceivably make things look not so nice for the cell server.
Yeah, I use HTML for math and Java.
Okay. Yeah.
The only other
it should
caveat
work.
I would
if it doesn't,
say-
let us know. I mean, there's things we can do to try to.
There is one other caveat. If you have a lot of people using old versions of Internet Explorer, I think that sometimes that causes trouble too, doesn't it? Like IE7.
Yeah, I think
Right.
the lowest version is IE8. Is that right, Ira?
Right now we support
IE 9
Yeah.
and 10.
Yeah, and a lot of people still have older Internet Explorers, and so you just want to be cautious about that. But otherwise, firewalls, as long as you use the HTTPS, you should be okay. So we had some firewall issues.
Other questions?
Now let's hear about making books.
Let's take
Keeping you really time limit by talking.
Good job. All right, I'm never gonna live this down.